When most people think of Virginia, they think of colonial history, battlefields and plantation houses, the suburbs that sprawl outward from Washington, a state that feels familiar even to those who have never been. And yes, Virginia has all of that. But hidden inside this state are towns that no guidebook prepares you for. A town where residents speak a dialect that linguists have traced back to the 1600s. A town that ran an illegal gambling empire from piers built over a river to exploit a legal loophole. A former coal boomtown where you can buy a house for less than the price of a second-hand car. And a sinking island in the Chesapeake Bay, where gravestones are slowly disappearing into the tide. These are 10 of the strangest small towns in Virginia. Now, let us begin. Number 10. In the northern end of the Shenandoah Valley sits Strasburg, population roughly 7,000. It was founded as a railroad stop in the 1800s and fought over during the Civil War. But today, Strasburg is known for something else entirely: antiques. Over 100 dealers operate within a 2-mile stretch of this town. The Great Strasburg Emporium alone houses thousands of items spread across multiple floors. Civil War bayonets next to Depression-era kitchenware next to 1950s diner signs. The Virginia Tourism Corporation designated it the antique capital of Virginia, and the town took the title seriously. Walk down the main street on a Tuesday morning, and you will pass more antique shops than you will people. The smell of furniture polish and old wood drifts through open doorways. Glass cabinets hold pocket watches that stopped ticking a century ago. Hand-painted signs advertise estate sales that seem to happen every weekend. The median home price hovers around $250,000, modest by Virginia standards. But what makes Strasburg strange is not the price of living here. It is that the entire commercial identity of a town of 7,000 depends on buying and selling objects from a vanished America. Every shopfront is a museum that charges retail prices. A town that profits entirely from preserving the past is an odd thing. But drive 4 hours southwest into the Blue Ridge Mountains, and you will find a town that rejected the past entirely and built something no one saw coming. Number 9. Floyd, Virginia. The town itself has fewer than 500 residents. The county around it holds roughly 15,000. It sits along the Blue Ridge Parkway at an elevation of over 2,500 feet. Remote by any standard. Conservative by deep tradition. And yet Floyd became one of the most unlikely countercultural outposts in the American South. It started with the Floyd Country Store. In 1983, the store began hosting a Friday night jamboree, live old-time music, flatfoot dancing on wooden boards, no admission charge for years. It ran every single Friday, and it has never stopped, over 40 years and counting. Word spread slowly through the network of musicians and craftspeople who travel the Appalachian corridor. Organic farmers arrived. Off-grid homesteaders followed. Potters and weavers and banjo makers settled into the surrounding hollows. Floyd County now has one of the highest concentrations of organic farms per capita in the state of Virginia. On a Friday evening, the country store fills beyond capacity. Elderly couples in overalls dance beside young families who moved here from cities they no longer wanted to live in. The banjo and fiddle compete with the stomping of boots on hardwood. Outside, the Blue Ridge turns purple in the last light. The music carries across the street and into the hills. The median home price sits around $170,000. For a place this strange and this beautiful, that number surprises people. A town where Appalachian tradition and back-to-the-land counterculture share the same dance floor is a rare thing. But head east across the entire state to the Atlantic coast, and you will find a barrier island where the strangest annual tradition in Virginia has been running for nearly 100 years. Number 8. Chincoteague. A barrier island on Virginia's eastern shore, permanent population just under 3,000. It sits beside Chesapeake Island, a long ribbon of sand managed by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. And on Chesapeake, roughly 150 wild ponies roam free. Every July, members of the Chincoteague Volunteer Fire Company ride on horseback to round up the southern herd. They drive the ponies to the edge of the Chesapeake Channel and wait for slack tide. Then the ponies swim. 40,000 spectators line the shore to watch. Children stand in shallow water as the horses emerge dripping and shaking onto the Chincoteague side. The next day, foals are auctioned at the carnival grounds. Prices can reach several $1,000s each. The proceeds fund the fire department. This tradition has run since 1925. Marguerite Henry's 1947 novel, Misty of Chincoteague, made this place famous across the English-speaking world. The book is still in print. The original Misty is preserved, taxidermied, in a local museum. But beneath the charm is a growing unease. The Virginia Institute of Marine Science has documented steady shoreline erosion across the eastern shore barrier islands. Sea levels in the Chesapeake Bay region are rising faster than the global average. The salt marshes that protect Chincoteague are thinning. The ponies still swim. The crowds still come. But the land beneath all of it is not as permanent as it once seemed. An island where wild ponies swim across a channel every summer while the land slowly erodes beneath them is something from another century. But travel inland and south into Virginia's coal fields, and the strangest thing is not what a town has, it is what a town lost. Number 7. Pocahontas, Virginia. Tazewell County. In 1882, a man named Jordan Nelson discovered a coal seam here that would change the region forever. The Pocahontas seam became one of the most famous coal deposits in the world. By the early 1900s, the town had swelled to 5,000 residents. It had an opera house, hotels, a commercial district that rivaled towns 10 times its size. The coal from Pocahontas fueled the United States Navy. It powered the Norfolk and Western Railway. It was exported to Europe. Then the mines closed. The jobs left. The people followed. Today, the population is around 400. You can walk the main street in 3 minutes and pass more boarded windows than open doors. The Opera House is a shell. The hotels are gone. Houses in Pocahontas are listed for under $20,000, some for under $10,000. The Pocahontas Exhibition coal mine, the original mine that started it all, is now a tourist attraction. You pay a few dollars and walk underground into the same tunnels where men once worked 12-hour shifts in darkness. Inside, the temperature drops immediately. Water drips from the ceiling onto narrow-gauge rail tracks. The walls are black with a century of coal dust. Then you step back into daylight and see the town as it is. A church bell tower, a handful of occupied houses, a post office. Silence. For British viewers who remember what happened to mining communities in Wales and Yorkshire, Pocahontas will feel uncomfortably familiar. A place that was once essential to a nation and is now a museum of itself. A coal town reduced to a fraction of what it was is a sobering thing. But 2 hours west, pressed against the Kentucky border, is a town where the main street is not a street at all. It is a hiking trail. Number 6. Damascus, Washington County. Population fewer than 800. It sits in a gap between Iron Mountain and the edge of the Cherokee National Forest. And through this tiny town run 3 of the most significant long-distance trails in the United States. The Appalachian Trail passes directly through the center of Damascus on its 2,190-mile route from Georgia to Maine. The Virginia Creeper Trail, a 34-mile rail trail, begins here, and the Trans-America Bicycle Route, which crosses the entire country, passes through as well. Damascus calls itself Trail Town, USA. The name is not an exaggeration. Every May, the population multiplies by a factor of 20 during trail days. Through hikers who started at Springer Mountain in Georgia months earlier arrive in Damascus, filthy, exhausted, and elated. They pick up mail drops at the post office. They resupply at the outfitters. They sleep in hostels and church basements and in tents pitched on the lawns of strangers who have been hosting hikers for decades. Then they shoulder their packs and walk north again, back into the forest. On a spring morning outside trail days, Damascus is quiet. A few bicycles lean against the general store. The Creeper Trail disappears into a tunnel of hardwoods beside White-Top Laurel Creek. The Appalachian Trail's white blazes are painted on utility poles along the main road. The median home price sits around $140,000. For a place surrounded by national forest with direct access to 3 legendary trails, that figure strikes most people as absurdly low. But the strangeness of Damascus is in a town whose entire identity depends on people passing through and never staying. A town built around trails that carry people elsewhere is unusual. But not every strange town in Virginia is defined by what passes through it. Some are defined by what rises from the ground beneath. Number 5. Bath County. In the western mountains of Virginia, total population around 4,000 for the entire county. There is not a single traffic light. The population density is fewer than 5 people per square mile. And from the rocks beneath this landscape, hot water has been rising to the surface for thousands of years. The twin communities of Hot Springs and Warm Springs sit a few miles apart along Route 220. The thermal springs here were documented as early as 1761. George Washington bathed in them. Thomas Jefferson wrote about the waters in his notes on the state of Virginia. The Omni Homestead Resort, which sits above the hot springs, has operated continuously since 1766. That makes it one of the oldest resort operations in North America. Over 250 years of guests checking in to soak in water that emerges from the earth at roughly 100 degrees Fahrenheit. But it is the bathhouse at Warm Springs that truly stops people. It was built in 1836, a simple octagonal wooden structure set over a natural pool. It is still in use. You walk in, lower yourself into water that Jefferson himself once described, and look up through the open roof at the sky above the Allegheny Mountains. Steam rises from the surface on a cold morning and vanishes into air so clean it almost tastes sweet. The nearest city of any size is over an hour away. The silence in Bath County is not the absence of sound. It is a presence. For British viewers who understand the tradition of spa towns, from Bath itself to Harrogate and Buxton, this corner of Virginia will make immediate and visceral sense. A landscape whose value is in its stillness. A county with no traffic lights and thermal springs that have been drawing visitors for over 2 centuries feels timeless. But head east to the tip of Virginia's eastern shore, and you will find a town whose story is not timeless at all. It is a story of death and resurrection. Number 4. Cape Charles. Northampton County, population barely 900. It sits at the southern tip of the Eastern Shore Peninsula, facing west across the Chesapeake Bay. It was purpose-built in 1884 as the southern terminus of the New York, Philadelphia, and Norfolk Railroad. Passengers and freight arrived by rail and transferred to ferries that crossed the bay to Norfolk. Cape Charles was a transit point. It was never meant to be a destination. Then the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel opened in 1964. The ferries stopped. The railroad declined. By the 1990s, Cape Charles was hollowed out. Victorian houses stood vacant. Storefronts were boarded. Property values collapsed. You could buy a 3-bedroom house with a bay view for under $15,000. Then something shifted. In the early 2000s, retirees from the Washington Corridor and the Northeast began discovering Cape Charles. They bought the Victorians for almost nothing and restored them. Artists followed, then remote workers. A coffee shop opened in a former hardware store. A boutique hotel appeared in a renovated inn. By 2023, the same houses that sold for $12,000 2 decades earlier were listed at $350,000 or more. Cape Charles earned a Main Street America designation. Travel magazines began calling it one of the best small-town comebacks on the East Coast. But the revival brought tension. Longtime residents watched their property taxes rise. Families who had held on through the decades of decline found themselves priced out of the town they had refused to leave. The beach at Cape Charles faces west across the Chesapeake Bay. It is one of the few places on the East Coast where you can watch the sun set over the water. On a summer evening, the light turns the bay gold, and the restored houses glow in shades of peach and mint and pale blue. It is beautiful, and it is complicated. A town that died and came back to life only to find that resurrection has its own cost is a difficult story. But drive inland to the Blue Ridge foothills, and you will hear a sound that has not changed in nearly a century. Number 3, Galax, population roughly 7,000. It sits in the foothills where the Blue Ridge meets the plateau of southwest Virginia. The town was named after the Galax plant, a low-growing evergreen that carpets the forest floor across these mountains. But Galax is known worldwide for something else entirely: music. Since 1935, the town has hosted the Old Fiddlers Convention. It is the oldest and largest old-time music competition on Earth. Every August, musicians from across the United States and beyond descend on Phelps Park. For 1 week, the town's population doubles. Competition categories span fiddle, banjo, guitar, mandolin, autoharp, dulcimer, clog dancing, and folk singing. The stage runs from afternoon until well past midnight. The tradition here predates recording technology. These are tunes passed from hand to hand across generations, melodies carried from the 1700s and the 1800s, reshaped by the isolation of the Appalachian Mountains into something distinct. Scholars at the Smithsonian have traced specific fiddle tunes played at Galax back to Scottish and Irish originals that are no longer performed in their countries of origin. The music survived here because these mountains kept it. On a warm August evening at Phelps Park, families sit in circles of lawn chairs around the competition stage. Children clog dance on plywood boards laid in the grass. The smell of pulled pork and fried apple pies drifts from the food stalls. Darkness falls and the music does not stop. Behind the main stage, smaller circles form. Old men with fiddles play tunes they learned from their grandfathers. A banjo player from North Carolina sits beside a guitarist from Tennessee beside a singer from Floyd County. No one asks for credentials. You sit down and you play. The median home price in Galax is around $150,000. A town that is the world capital of a living musical tradition, and most people outside the region have never heard its name. A lone fiddle played in a campsite after the main stage has gone dark is a sound that could belong to any century. But the next town is stranger still. It is a place that barely exists on paper, a place the government once proposed to physically relocate, and the people said no. Number 2. Tangier Island, Accomack County. A small island in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay, roughly 12 miles from the mainland. Accessible only by boat or by a single airstrip just long enough for small propeller aircraft. Population approximately 400, down from a peak of over 1,100 in the 1900 census. Linguists from Duke University and the University of Virginia have studied the speech patterns of Tangier residents for decades. They documented phonological features that trace directly to 17th century English settlers from the West Country of England and the counties of Cornwall and Devon. Words are pronounced here in ways that have not been heard in England itself for 300 years. The island was settled around 1686. Many of today's residents are direct descendants of those original families. The same surnames appear on the mailboxes, the crab boats, and the gravestones. The economy runs almost entirely on blue crab. Watermen leave the docks before dawn and return in the afternoon with bushels that are shipped to the mainland. There are no cars on Tangier. The paths are too narrow. Residents use golf carts and bicycles. There is one school with fewer than 60 students, one restaurant, one health clinic staffed by a single physician. Medical emergencies require helicopter evacuation to the mainland. The island is disappearing. The Army Corps of Engineers has documented land loss at a rate of roughly 15 feet of shoreline per year in some areas. The Virginia Institute of Marine Science projects that at current rates, Tangier could become uninhabitable within 25 years. The federal government proposed relocation. The residents refused. They have buried their families on this island for 3 centuries. And now some of those graves are being swallowed by the bay. At the western edge of the island, headstones stand in water at high tide. Names and dates still legible on stones that were once 50 feet from the shore. The crab pots are stacked on every dock. The church bell rings on Sunday morning. Children ride bicycles on paths their great-great-grandparents walked. And the water is closer tonight than it was last year. A sinking island where a 17th century dialect is still spoken and the dead are being reclaimed by the sea would seem impossible to surpass. But Virginia's strangest town may not be the one that is disappearing. It may be the one that was never supposed to exist at all. Number 1. Colonial Beach, Westmoreland County, a town of fewer than 4,000 on the southern bank of the Potomac River, about 70 miles south of Washington. It started as a quiet summer resort in the late 1800s. Steamboats brought visitors from the capital to swim and fish and sit on the sand. It was pleasant and unremarkable, and then someone noticed the legal boundary. Virginia's border does not stop at the southern bank of the Potomac. It extends to the low water mark on the Maryland side. The entire river, under a compact dating back to the Colonial Charter of 1632, belongs to Virginia. But Maryland law governed certain activities on the water itself. And in the 1940s, entrepreneurs in Colonial Beach realized that structures built on piers over the Potomac might fall into a jurisdictional gray area. They began installing slot machines, dozens of them, then hundreds. By the late 1940s and into the 1950s, Colonial Beach had become one of the most active gambling destinations on the East Coast. Piers extended out over the river, packed with slot machines and card tables. Visitors arrived by the thousands. Money flowed in quantities that a town of this size had no business handling. The FBI investigated. The Virginia State Police intervened. Local officials fought federal officials. Maryland disputed Virginia's claims. The entire operation rested on a legal interpretation of a river boundary drawn before the United States existed. In 1959, the Virginia Supreme Court ruled against the gambling operations. The slot machines were removed. The piers were dismantled or left to rot. The visitors stopped coming. Colonial Beach did not collapse overnight. It simply deflated, slowly and permanently. The boardwalk remained. The Victorian houses remained. The river remained. But the energy, the money, the purpose of the town drained away like the tide going out. Today, the median home price sits around $230,000. Below the state average, below most of the surrounding county. A number of homes are classified as seasonal or vacant. The boardwalk still stretches along the waterfront. A few fishing rods lean against the railing on a weekday afternoon. The Potomac is wide here, almost 2 miles across. On the Maryland shore, you can see trees and not much else. At low tide, if you walk to the end of the boardwalk and look downriver, you can still see the concrete pilings. They rise from the mud in uneven rows, gray and cracked and streaked with algae. They are what remains of the piers where the slot machines once stood. No plaque marks them. No sign explains what happened here. They are just old concrete in the river, standing in water that belongs to Virginia under a charter signed nearly 400 years ago. The gulls sit on them. The tide moves around them twice a day.